61 pounds of tomatoes. That is what my wife Karen wrote in the harvest log last September for the 4 plants on the east side of my garden. The 4 plants right beside them, same seed packet, same soil, same water, same sun, gave us 38 pounds. The only difference between those two raised beds was about $1 worth of a plain, old-fashioned white powder that I buried in the ground back in May. Not sprayed on the leaves, not sprinkled around the stem, buried, and the burying turns out to be the whole trick. Now, you have probably seen the headlines about this powder. Banned in 27 states, endless tomato growth. I'm going to tell you exactly what the powder is, exactly how I use it in my own beds step by step, and exactly what those bans really are, because the true story is stranger and more useful than the headline. And stay with me all the way to the end, because the reason some states regulate this powder and the reason it does absolutely nothing for 9 out of 10 gardeners who try it turn out to be the very same reason. It comes down to one specific thing this powder refuses to do once it touches your soil, and once you understand that one thing, you will never waste another scoop of it as long as you garden. I'm Steve Calloway. I have been growing food in the same Midwest backyard for more than 20 years, and I run side-by-side test beds with written records, so when I give you a number, it came off my own kitchen scale. My first garden was a jungle of green vine that gave me about a dozen sad tomatoes all summer. Karen keeps the harvest log with me now, and these days our biggest problem is giving food away fast enough. Let me start with the problem this powder solves, because odds are you have lived it. You set out your tomato plants around Mother's Day. You feed them, you water them, and by the middle of July, you are standing in front of 6 feet of gorgeous green vine with about 4 tomatoes hiding somewhere in all that leaf. So you do what the fertilizer bag suggests, and you feed them again. And what you get is more vine. I did that for years. That jungle garden of mine was this exact problem, and the fix was never more fertilizer. It was a different element entirely. Nearly every bagged garden fertilizer leans hard on nitrogen, and nitrogen grows leaves. Leaves are the factory floor, but leaves are not the product. The element that builds roots, sets flowers, and moves the plant's energy into actual fruit is phosphorus. And phosphorus is exactly what this $1 powder is loaded with. The powder is bone meal. Plain, finely ground bone, the same material your grandmother's generation saved out of the kitchen and dug into the vegetable rows, and it sits today on the shelf of every garden centre and a good share of dollar stores in this country for around $1 a pound, roughly 15% phosphorus, a generous helping of calcium, and nothing in it you need to be afraid of. But before you drive out and buy a box, hold on. How you put it in the ground decides everything. And I promised you the state regulations and the failed gardens share one explanation. We are working our way straight toward it. Now, this bone meal technique is one piece of a bigger system, and I want to be straight with you about where it comes from. Everything I am showing you today comes out of the book I put together called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It is the exact 30-day system I follow in my own backyard to roughly double what every plant produces, and I wrote it out day by day, from soil preparation right through harvest, for home gardeners who want significantly more food from the space they already have. No extra square footage, no expensive equipment, and it works the same in raised beds, in-ground rows, and containers. It covers the big 7 yield killers, which is the checklist I use to find what is quietly holding a garden back, plus feeding for fruit instead of foliage, the strategic pruning that feels wrong but multiplies production, and the companion and succession planning systems with the science behind each one. It is 115 pages, and it costs $17 right now, marked down from $47. One decent harvest of grocery store tomatoes costs more than that. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, back to the garden, because you need to know what this powder actually does before you can use it right. Think of a tomato plant as a little factory. Nitrogen builds the building, phosphorus pays the electric bill. Inside every plant cell, phosphorus is the backbone of the molecule that moves energy around. the plant's working currency. When a tomato plant has plenty of it down where the roots live, three things happen in order. First, the root system doubles down, pushing deeper and wider, which means more water and more nutrients coming in all season. Second, the plant starts setting flower clusters instead of endlessly stacking leaves because it finally has the energy budget to invest in the next generation. Third, and this is the part you eat, the plant has the horsepower to fill those fruits out instead of dropping half its blossoms on the ground. That is what happened in my east bed. Same four plants, same watering can, same weather. And the bed with the buried bone meal finished at 61 pounds, while the plain bed finished at 38. 61 against 38. That is a 23-pound difference off $1 of powder. And the garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. Now, here is where most folks go wrong, and I want you to hear this part twice. The natural instinct is to open the box and shake the powder around the base of the plant like you were salting a baked potato. I did exactly that the first year I tested it, on a whole row, and my written records from that season show no measurable difference at all. Not a pound. The powder sat there on the surface, the rain hit it, and the plants never saw it. Why the surface does not work and where that powder actually goes when the rain hits it is the heart of the band story I promised you. So hold that thought about the rain. For now, burn this into your memory. Bone meal on top of the soil is $1 thrown in the trash. Bone meal buried at root depth is the 23 pounds. Depth is everything, and I will give you the exact numbers. Let's do the method, and we will start with new transplants because that is the easiest version and the most effective one. This is for the day you set young tomato plants into the garden. Dig your planting hole about 12 inches deep. Tomatoes like to be planted deep anyway, since they grow new roots all along the buried stem. Measure out half a cup of bone meal. That is half a cup, an ordinary kitchen measuring cup, not half the box. Pour it into the bottom of the hole. Take your trowel and mix that powder into the bottom 3 inches of soil so it is blended, not sitting in a white layer. Now add about 2 inches of plain soil on top of the mixed layer. That plain 2-inch cushion matters, so do not skip it. Young roots straight out of a nursery pot are tender, and you want them to grow down into the enriched zone over their first couple of weeks rather than land directly on it the first day. Set your plant in on top of that cushion. Fill in around it like normal and water it in well. So, to gather that back up in one breath, it goes 12 inches down, half a cup mixed into the bottom, 2 inches of plain soil, then the plant. The roots will find that phosphorus bank right about the time the plant is ready to start flowering. And from there, it draws on it all season long. One planting day job, 30 seconds per plant, and there is no rush. Take your time with it. But maybe your tomatoes are already in the ground and knee-high. You did not miss the boat. There's a second method for established plants, and I use it every June on anything I forgot at planting time. I call it the 4-hole method. Here is how it goes. Take a wooden dowel, a broom handle, or a bulb planter. Push it into the soil 6 inches deep. Make that hole 6 inches out from the main stem, far enough to miss the crown, close enough to sit right in the feeder roots. Do that in 4 spots around the plant, like 4 points on a compass. Drop 1 rounded tablespoon of bone meal down each hole. That is 1 tablespoon per hole, 4 holes, which comes to a 1/4 cup per plant. Push the soil closed over each hole with your thumb. Then water the whole area slowly and deeply. Once more gathered up, it is 4 holes, 6 inches deep, 6 inches out, 1 tablespoon each. You've just placed the phosphorus directly in the root zone instead of on the roof of it. One honest warning from experience before we move on. Bone meal smells like dinner to a dog. If you have a dog, or your neighbour does, water it in well and keep an eye on the bed for a few days because I once watched a beagle excavate a tomato plant like he was digging for treasure. That handles the how. But it leaves you with a second question, which is, how much is too much? And this is where I have to slow you down because with this powder, more is genuinely worse. 1 application per season. That is it. Half a cup at planting or the 4-hole treatment once in early summer, never both, and never a monthly repeat. Phosphorus banks in the soil. It does not wash through like nitrogen does, and if you pile it in year after year, the excess starts locking up iron and zinc, so the plant cannot take them in, And you will see new leaves turning pale yellow while you stand there wondering why your generous feeding is hurting things. Too much also quiets down the beneficial soil fungi that partner with tomato roots, the very helpers that ferry nutrients in. So once per season, and if you want to do it the way I do it, spend a few dollars on a basic soil test kit first, or send a sample through your county extension office. Two more numbers while we're at it. Phosphorus is most available to roots when your soil pH sits between 6 and 7, which is right where most vegetable gardens naturally land. If your test comes back strongly acidic or strongly alkaline, fix the pH first, because outside that window, the plant cannot cash the check, no matter how much powder you bury. I tested this myself across 3 seasons, and the once-a-year beds beat the heavy-handed beds every single time. So what should you actually watch for once it is in the ground? Give it 2 to 3 weeks. The first sign is not tomatoes, it is blossoms, whole yellow clusters of them where you were only getting singles and pairs. The second sign is that those blossoms hold instead of dropping, because the plant finally has the energy to carry them through to fruit set. And there is a quiet bonus riding along in the box. Bone meal is rich in calcium, and calcium is the nutrient behind blossom end rot, that ugly black leather patch on the bottom of a tomato just as it ripens. Blossom end rot is mostly a watering problem. Uneven moisture keeps calcium from moving into the fruit, so keep your watering steady and even. But having calcium banked right in the root zone stacks the deck in your favour. And since I started burying bone meal, I can count my end rot tomatoes each year on one hand. Same space, same effort, completely different result. And now the plants are fed, the method is yours, and it is finally time to answer the question on the thumbnail. Because I keep telling you the bans and the failures are one story, and here it is. Here is the truth about banned in 27 states, and I'm going to give it to you straight because you deserve better than a scary headline. Nobody is going to arrest you for buying bone meal. It is on the shelf in all 50 states. What is true is this. More than a dozen states have real laws on the books restricting phosphorus fertilizer, and hundreds of counties and cities have local rules stacked on top of those, which is where the big scary state counts in these headlines come from. Minnesota was one of the first back in the 2000s, and states across the Great Lakes and the East Coast followed. And the reason is not that phosphorus works too well in your garden. The reason is water. When phosphorus washes off lawns and fields into storm drains, it ends up in ponds, rivers and lakes. And phosphorus grows algae the same way it grows tomato blossoms. In August of 2014, an algae bloom on Lake Erie turned the water green as pea soup and put out a toxin that shut down the drinking water for the city of Toledo, Ohio. Roughly 500,000 people could not use their taps for days. That is what the laws are aimed at. And honestly, as a gardener who fishes those lakes, I am glad they exist. But notice what those laws actually restrict. Lawn fertilizer, broadcast spreading on top of the grass, where the very next thunderstorm carries it down the driveway and into the drain. Vegetable gardens are exempt almost everywhere, and here is the beautiful part. The reason for that exemption is the same reason your neighbour's sprinkled bone meal never grew him a single extra tomato. Phosphorus does not move. The moment it meets soil, it binds tight to the minerals in it, iron, aluminum, calcium, and it locks in place. In a typical garden bed, phosphorus travels less than 1 inch per year. Less than 1 inch. So powder sprinkled on the surface never migrates down those 6 inches to the roots. It just sits on top, waiting for rain to carry it sideways into the gutter, feeding the algae instead of your supper. That is why the surface sprinkle fails. That is why the lawn laws exist. And that is why the entire method I taught you today is really just one word: placement. Bury it where the roots already are, because it will never come to them on its own. The states are not regulating a miracle. They are regulating a nutrient that stays exactly where you put it. And once you put it in the right place, it works for you all season long. And that is exactly the kind of thing the whole protocol is built on. Tested, cheap, and written out day by day so you can just follow along. Steve's 30-day maximum yield protocol takes what you learned today and puts the other 29 days around it. The big 7 yield killers, feeding for fruit instead of foliage, the pruning that feels wrong but multiplies production, and the companion and succession systems, all for $17 instead of $47. One buried half cup paid me back 23 pounds of tomatoes. The book is the same math, 115 pages of it. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time, there is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So that is the whole thing. $1 of bone meal, buried 6 inches down where the roots live once a season, because phosphorus stays put wherever you place it. If you run this test in your own beds, come back and tell me the before and after. I read every single one. Next time, I am going to show you the one pruning cut I make in July, a single snip most gardeners are afraid to make, that push my per plant numbers up by a third in the test beds the very same season. Get out there and get your hands dirty, and I'll see you in the garden.